So it is the 13th day of fighting now in Sudan, and airstrikes have hit the capital Khartoum this morning, despite an apparent ceasefire. Clashes are also intensifying in the province of Darfur. The truce between two warring generals is set to expire tonight, and there are fears that the battles will then intensify, although neighbour South Sudan is working to extend the ceasefire. For the latest, let's talk to our regional correspondent now, Bastien Renouil. And Bastien, you've reported extensively from Sudan. You're speaking to people there regularly at the moment. So what can you tell us about the fighting today?
Hello, Nadia. Well, I can tell you that the fighting continues at the moment in Khartoum and in several locations around Sudan. In Khartoum, I was on the phone with some of my sources a few minutes ago, and they told me that they can still hear gunshots and explosions. One of them saw what he believes was a rocket hitting an apartment earlier today. He says that at least 3 people were killed. So you understand that the fighting continues. The fighting is still very intense in the capital city of Sudan. As far as I understand, there's still heavy fighting in the center of the city around the airport and the headquarters of the army. The headquarters is under the control of the military. The airport is under the control of the rapid support forces, and they're clashing to try to take control of each other's areas. But despite that, the army published a statement earlier today saying that the situation was relatively quiet today in Khartoum, and that they were monitoring movements from the rapid support forces, and that in case of any breach of the ceasefire, they will not hesitate to retaliate. So it's a very surprising communication from the army at the moment. It's very difficult to understand why they say that, but what I can tell you is that thousands and thousands of people are still trying to leave Khartoum at the moment, and it's very difficult for them because of the fighting. Speaking about the fighting, there are still clashes ongoing in the city of El Geneina in the state of West Darfur. El Geneina is located just a few kilometers away from the border with Chad, and there's been fighting ongoing since Tuesday in this city, according to my contacts on the ground. They say that at least 50 people were killed yesterday, 50 civilians, but it's very difficult to have more news of what's happening today at the moment, because it seems that there is no electricity in the city. It's very difficult to reach people on the ground, but what we know for sure is that thousands and thousands of people will try to escape from El Geneina as soon as possible, probably to go to Chad, which is just a few kilometers away, as I was saying. And so, as far as we know, already 20,000 people crossed the border, and more are likely to go to Chad if the fighting continues in El Geneina.
Now, Bastien, South Sudan, Sudan's neighbour, is trying to broker a deal right now to prolong the ceasefire there for another 3 days. But given the scale of the fighting that's going on right now, as you've just explained to us, would such a deal actually make much of a difference for the civilians who are trapped now in Sudan?
Well, they believe that the answer to your question is no. There was no real ceasefire during the past days. It was more a kind of a humanitarian corridor to allow foreigners to reach this military airstrip located 20 kilometers north of Khartoum. Some civilians, some Sudanese civilians, were able to leave Khartoum as well, taking bus and cars to leave the city. But it's not a real ceasefire at the moment, since the fighting continues in several places around Sudan. So what is it going to change, this new 72 hours ceasefire? Well, it was brokered by IGAD. It's a regional organization promoting peace and development in East Africa. 3 presidents of the region, President of Kenya, of South Sudan and Djibouti, were supposed to come to Khartoum to negotiate with both al-Burhan, the head of the army, and Hemeti, the head of the rapid support forces. And as far as we understand, according to diplomatic sources that are close to the army refused to let them land in Khartoum because of the fighting, because it was not the right moment. So IGAD keep putting the pressure on both Hemeti and Burhan, and they're supposed to send envoys to Juba in South Sudan to negotiate. But it's very difficult to imagine what can be the outcome of these negotiations. Civilians in Khartoum tell me that they don't believe that any ceasefire can happen during the next hours, during the next days. They only believe that the 2 generals will keep fighting, because it's a question of life or death for them now. They know that the one who will win will have a chance to remain in power, and they don't imagine any one of them leaving the fighting and stopping, like dropping the weapons. It's impossible for them. So they're not expecting any ceasefire coming anytime soon, even with this IGAD mediation.
Bastien Renouil, live there in Djibouti, as always. Thank you very much.